neighborly manner, 24/7, 365 or 366. This is History Hefner with my usual smoking jacket, and I have also supplied a nice matching ascot, nice red color there, something kind of Christmassy, for even though it's 6 months away from Christmas. But yes, formal wear as usual, and it's kind of sweltering, so I've got a white t-shirt on underneath that, but I've got the ascot and the smoking jacket to go with you, and for the next hour or so, I will be answering all of your questions related to history, social studies, and the like, geopolitics, past and present, what we usually do here at the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. I've got my wonderful moderators, Horace and Harry here. Great to see you both. I hope you guys are enjoying your afternoon and everybody's having a good Saturday or almost Sunday over in the UK and in Europe and throughout the world. We have people joining us from everywhere. The Friendly Neighborhood History channels, we talk about history that impacts everyone all throughout the globe. So I see Solomon. Hello, Solomon. Thank you for watching the videos. And Steve, great to see you as always. So we do live streams every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I answer all of your questions related to history and the like. And on Sundays, we do a live stream lecture. I still haven't checked the poll in the last couple hours, so I don't know what I'm going to be doing for our topic. So I'm letting you guys pick. So go and vote in that poll on the channel. And if you like what you hear and you like talking about history and learning about history, please like and subscribe. And if you want to show even more support, consider joining or donating or getting a perk comment or something like that. So yeah. Roshan, great to see you. And Harry, almost midnight. Another nice Saturday over in the UK, almost over. And Evan, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm sorry we were just cutting out, and then I came back. I did another hour or so, but I'm very appreciative to hear that you left another live stream to join us here. So I don't know about your suggestion. I think it is. Yes, it is up on that poll, so please go vote in that. I am not cheating on you considering you only have 5 on. True, that's fair. We'll get somewhere, but thank you. 2 poll choices could be Iran-Israel war. Well, that's the Mideast option. So there's a Mideast option, there's the immigration option. Then we could do a topic that's not controversial and crazy and going to cause an uproar in the chat and is going to give me anxiety, like, you know, the Great Awakening or the Enlightenment. Those were 2 topics that were recommended. And so I'm getting a lot of questions about Iran and Israel's war. I do talk about politics, geopolitics, past and present, because it is relevant to history, and history can teach us a great deal about how to deal with those different things. So thank you for joining us, people from all over the world. We've had people from Iran, from Israel, from Iraq, from Palestine, joining us here at the Friendly Neighborhood channel, as well as India, Pakistan, Russia and Ukraine, Norway. We bring them all, whether or not their countries are at peace or at war. So put a poll on about how accurate historical references are considering books were burnt by Europeans to hide people's inventions and accomplishments. That has happened, no doubt about that. So Evan, I'm not going to say no. What is your opinion on Newton? Are you talking about Isaac Newton, one of the greatest philosophers and scientists the world has ever known? Basically invented calculus along with Leibniz. They both invented it independently of one another, the German mathematician Leibniz. Yes. Hello, I catch fish. User, thank you for joining us from Coventry. I always think of the Coventry Carol when I hear that. Kolkata, great to see you as well. Thank you for voting, Steve. Like and subscribe, and that's the most informative show out here. I try to be one of the most. So yes, please like and subscribe if you haven't. That's so kind of you. And Harsh, maybe you can put the social media handles in the chat. You guys can follow me on Instagram, X, Facebook. I also have my Patreon where I have bonus content and early releases available for you. Supporting me there goes a long way towards helping the channel. Any money that we gather on this channel, I'm going to use towards making this channel bigger and better for all of you. There's also my Patreon where I write articles and have discussions there, so go check that out. Have you seen we're sending the RAF and air defense systems to the 2 bases in Cyprus to keep the UK safe from Iran threats? Yes, and I have a video talking about Cyprus and how it's divided. The island of Cyprus is quite fascinating. The northeastern portion belongs to the Turks. For a long time, the British actually owned Cyprus in the early 20th century. King Richard the Lionheart conquered it on his way to the Third Crusade. And there are 2 bases there that remind the Cypriots of their relationship to the British Empire. They were a British protectorate and then part of the British Empire in the 20th century. The southwestern portion is self-governing, and there is a UN buffer zone between the Cypriots and the Turks, who have not always been on the same page. Lunamar, Anakin, hello, ODP, Ritesh. Anakin is asking, what is your opinion, and Rampushan about, what are you asking? You might want to retype it. But yes, I'm answering all questions related to history, social studies, social sciences, and the like here at the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. So if you enjoy the vibes, talking about history, getting your questions answered, consider liking and subscribing. Ahmad, my dream is that you would like and subscribe. And ODP, you got your shout out. Call your doctor, Lafondish. And yes, it is Pride Month. I have a video about why June is Pride Month. I always used to feel that it became Pride Month because of the Bergefell decision 10 years ago, which the Supreme Court always gives out its decisions in the United States in June. The Obergefell decision was the U.S. basically deciding that no state could restrict marriage between a man and a woman, basically legalizing gay marriage in all 50 states. That was that was made in June of 2015, and I also thought that that was the reason why June was Pride Month. But then I realized the Stonewall riots were at the very end of June in 1969 and gave birth to the gay rights movement that became extraordinarily popular in the 1970s. So you don't have to, Koram. Liking and subscribing is just good enough. Yes, Harry, I know. You're very, very scared of Trump. I will say, the parade looked intimidating when I saw the videos of it, but it's not anything we haven't done before with air shows and demonstrating military might. Countries do this all the time. Thank you for joining us from South Africa. Matteo, are you from Italy? Because you said ciao. Let me see. And yes, I would love if we could all just get along. Why did this guy vote for Kamala Harris? I never said anything about that. Nobody knows who I voted for. I don't share my politics. I try to be as objective as I possibly can. Ramputin, I don't know who you are referring to. And Harsh just put the social media so you guys can follow me there. And Nice, this is the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. I am doing my weekend Q&A, Ask Me Anything, where for the next 55 minutes or so, I'll be answering all questions past and present related to history, social studies, and the like. And yes, Harry, you are not orangist or racist towards orange people. You love the Oompa Loompas. What do you know about Zoroastrians and their role in modern history? Zoroastrianism is an ancient religion, a monotheistic religion that worshiped the god of fire. I forget the name of that god, but it originally came from Persia and was eventually kind of relegated to secondary status when Islam conquered Persia and Iran and became so much more of that. So Zoroastrianism is kind of in the background and the shadows. It's practiced by some Persians to this day. Yeah, ZH, I can't. I'm sorry. I'm not techie. So, USA is so unfortunate to have Trump as president. Impeach Trump, make America USA great, get rid of its leader so its CSN can be great again. So sad his making this happen. USA is going backwards, so sad. I may very well agree with you, Sam, but you don't have to scream it out by doing all caps. So, and thank you for subscribing. Dude, can we talk about the Cold War and the similarities between them and the present time? So I've come to the conclusion quite recently that after what I consider to be the Third World War in 1945, after the end of the last World War, you may call it World War II, that's fine. Basically, the entire world decided that it wasn't going to go to that. Rather than that, they were so scared of having a hot war, a world war, that it was better to actually fight each other indirectly through smaller entities, through espionage, through manipulation, through tactics, through political politicking all throughout the world, political manipulation, regime changes, and this is what the United States through the CIA and the Soviet Union through the KGB did throughout Central and South America, Africa, Eastern and Western Europe, and parts of Asia as well. So, yeah. The Stonewall riots. Do you know why August was named after Octavian? Yes, because he reformed the calendar, naming July after his great uncle and then August after him, Augustus, the revered one. The greatest Roman ruler of all time, by the way, Harry. What is the history of the U.S. flag since its Flag Day? So the Betsy Ross flag, the U.S. did have a flag, and it had the Union Jack actually in the upper corner. That was the Continental flag in 1775. But wanting one that represented their independence movement against the British, they eventually commissioned Betsy Ross to make a flag, and she came up with a design that had 13 stars in a circle on the upper left corner, and that became the first American flag that has the stars and the stripes, and that was approved of by Congress, that model, on June 14th, 1777. So that's why today is Flag Day. It is Flag Day, it is President Trump's birthday, and it is the 250th anniversary of when that same Continental Congress, the Second Continental Congress, authorized the creation of a Continental Army, which was the roots of the U.S. Army. So, yeah. Was cause for pride. Yeah, Stonewall, basically, Rodolfo, was, there was a gay bar called the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village, New York, one of the more cutting-edge neighborhoods in that area, very avant-garde place, and it was raided by the police, and the seeming oppression and discrimination against homosexual people eventually, and transgender people eventually led to the rise of resistance and riots, and those riots gave birth to the LGBTQIA+ movement. So, let me see here. Harry, ye dictators do it all the time, not democracies. Yes, very, very true. I appreciate you going out for No King's Day coming from Britain that has a king. So, and there are lots of Brits, and I love having the Brits here. I asked you 50 times, were you a major in political science? No, I was not. What do you know about British history? I try to be as smart as I can, Sam, by the way. But yes, quite a bit. Have an entire series of shorts on British monarchs. I've done tons of videos on them. My most popular videos, I do short content every day, long-form videos every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. My most popular videos tend to be the ones where I am talking about the British monarchs, especially Henry VIII. So, is it true that 1/4 of the male population on the earth is a descendant of Genghis Khan? It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but a lot of people, particularly from the Asian steppe and Eurasia, are indirectly related or directly related to Genghis Khan. Yeah. And if you ask a British history question, Harry might be able to answer it, but I will give you the correct answer instead. So let me see here. You can, Brain, try to ask about history, but politics is fine too. What do you think of the king challenging Trump? I love the idea of being anti-ruler, of a ruler who comes from a dictatorial, monarchical line, challenging someone who they think has too much power. It's just hilarious to me. What do you think about Palestine? Everybody always asks me about this. I said it before, my historical perspective. We should just start tagging and pinning the historical perspective in the chat. A two-state solution can be on the table, was on the table, was rejected for various reasons, has been disavowed by Israelis and Palestinians at different times, especially the Palestinians, and it could be very possible for there to be a Palestine if there wasn't an existential threat to Israel, and if Israel would just give the Palestinians some breathing room. I'm not ignoring your comments, Evan. Yes, today is the end of the anniversary of the Falkland Islands, one of the greatest British victories of the 20th century, where they were able to maintain one of their principalities that they owned, the Falkland Islands off the coast of Argentina. The Argentinians believe that those islands, Isla Malvinas, I believe they called it, belonged to them. The British wanted to keep it, and a war was fought, and after 3 years, the British were successful. Moon landing was not fake. No, Caesar was better. We've already had this conversation, so I won't get into it again, but Caesar was better. Yes, Octavius Caesar was better. Thank you for agreeing. And I'm glad you've been looking for this, Ben. You're in the right place. I really appreciate that. What's my favorite tea? Yes, I'm drinking some tea. I brew my own tea, and I've been brewing green and oolong. My favorite is either oolong milk tea, Thai milk tea, or Earl Grey. But I like green tea because it's really healthy and really good for you. So, but thank you for asking that. Austrian Archduke assassination starting an entire world war is ridiculous. What's ridiculous is all of the dominoes that were knocked over after Franz Ferdinand was killed by Gavrilo Princip. The Austrians basically trying to extort the Serbians telling Austria to go pound salt, the Russians coming to the defense of the Serbians, and the Germans telling the Austrians they could do whatever they want to the Serbians because they were going to do whatever they wanted to the Russians. The French joining in to protect the Russians, the Germans attacking France through Belgium, and Britain honoring Belgian neutrality, going into the war because of it. So it's incredible. Oh, that's hilarious, Ben. Yes, we will put you to sleep here. What socioeconomic factors do you think contribute to criminality the most? Population density, income, etc. It's for a GIS final study I'm doing at university. Interesting question. I do speak about cultural issues and things like that because of their relevance to history. If we look at the criminality, poverty is a huge indication. Poverty and lack of education, which often go hand in hand, are huge indicators of potential rises in crime. Lack of education and economic opportunities, many believe, are the reasons for the rise of inner city crime here in the United States and Islamic terrorism in the Middle East. Yeah. As they illegally took the islands and they became independent from Spain, and then we took them back in 1843, we kicked out the Argentines, who claimed in the 1700s that the Argentinians never recognized. Yes, that sounds like it. And the Argentinians getting their own independence would want to nationalize them and bring them into their own sphere because it's almost like the USA and Mexico thing where Mexico was not independent when the Spanish first settled that area. So why is every nation poor and Europe and USA still rich, and how come the white man is always winning? Is this a setup? No, it's not a setup. I think it has very little to do with race. I think Western civilization has proven through different means, some of them creative and productive, some of them exploitative, to be able to gather a lot of resources, centralize those resources, and through education and productivity, especially since the Industrial Revolution, build extraordinarily powerful economic and political empires that provide meaningful education to large amounts of people, particularly in the West. And this has made them wealthy and strong and prosperous. And some of that has been extractive and exploitative, to be sure. Some of it has been ingenuity. It's kind of a mix. So, hello, Echo. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. Very true. So, Harry, you do know more about the Falkland Wars than I do. So thank you for sharing that. Gaza was not a two-state solution. Gaza was originally owned by the Egyptians in 1948 when the land was divided. After the Arab-Israeli War, the Egyptians took over Gaza. and the Israelis took it back after the Six-Day War, and in 2005, as part of a concession to the Palestinians, gave it to the Palestinians as their own land. But Israel administers all the infrastructure, all of the utilities, and all of the access to and from Gaza. So Gaza is not an independent country. But why should the Pali people back off? It's their land. You say there is a threat to Israel. You are clearly a Zionist. Our people have suffered enough. Use Cretan. Yes, I love how you use Cretan. Nobody uses that insult anymore. Thank you for sharing your opinion. Your opinion is wrong. We move on. Yeah, I just now found this channel and I love it. It's great. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Echo. You're so kind. Were you wearing a yarmulke? No. Explain the 1924 election. It's important. So, 1923, President Warren Harding dies in office of a heart attack, although his wife may have poisoned him. And his successor, Calvin Coolidge, comes to the office. The Republicans are doing well. The economy is strong. New inventions that I was just talking about, for instance, are making America pretty prosperous and wealthy. Coolidge is popular enough that he easily defeats John W. Davis. I think it's John W. Davis, or no, not Davis. Forget the name of the Democrat who ran in 1924. He's kind of forgettable, no offense. But yeah, Coolidge wins easily in a big landslide as the economy is strong and the Republican laissez-faire approach is pretty popular. Then we sent the fleet and RAF to retake the Falklands, and they have remained British ever since. There you go. And Gaia Han, always great to see you. What am I wrong about? Okay. He's a Zionist, just FYI, he sides with Israel. You can see he has a yarmulke meeting on his head. He has been eating one. Yes, that's a yarmulke. Thank you for thinking that my hair is a tuft, but the tufts of my hair are yarmulkes, but that's really dumb, Evan. I'm sorry. Yes, the Mohawk tribe was one of the 5 Iroquois tribes, Riptar. They were formed a confederacy. So we talk about Native Americans in all the wrong ways, and sometimes we refer to nations as tribes. So the Sioux tribe or the Iroquois, those are not tribes, those are nations. Those are conglomerate of similar tribes who lived in similar areas and had similar cultural and itinerant or civilized practices. So the Mohawk were one, and they had a particular fashion of haircut, and they were known for throwing tomahawks in a semicircular manner, and they were throwing axes. That's where we get the term tomahawk. And Mohawk was their haircut, and they were a type of the Iroquois tribe in upstate New York. So yes. Can you talk about Vietnam? So probably you're referring to the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War really is a 30 years war for the Vietnamese people. It starts, it really is about 35 years. After France is knocked out of the Third World War, which happened on this day, June 14th, 1940, when Hitler entered Paris, their imperial power is undermined in Africa and in Southeast Asia. The Japanese, seeing this opportunity and aligning with the Third Reich and the Italians, invade Indochina and take over that area, and they are resisted by both the French and the natives. And in 1945, Ho Chi Minh, the leader of a separatist communist group of Vietnamese people, declares independence for Vietnam from the French. The French aren't having this. This causes a 9-year war that ends with the French being completely defeated and Vietnam being reorganized into an independent country. Originally, it is divided, where the north is taken over by the communist government of Ho Chi Minh and the south is taken over by a Western-friendly government that is full of corrupt dictators that could never stabilize the country or run it properly. But the United States does a lot to prop them up. The U.S. sends military advisors to help the South Vietnamese as the North invades, and northern belligerents working in the South, called the Viet Cong, undermine the democratic government, although it's really more of a brutal military dictatorship. In the South, eventually the United States goes in, they basically assassinate the dictator in charge of South Vietnam, reorganize the government, and take on the fighting themselves, escalating throughout the mid-1960s. Their inability to actually crush the Viet Cong or invade the North to stop the North Vietnamese, and the growing unpopularity amongst young people in the media, turns the American public against the war, and eventually they are forced to pull out in kind of a slow process called Vietnamization in the early 1970s, where they tried to do as much damage to the North Vietnamese and their communist allies in Cambodia and Laos next door, before eventually completely leaving the country in 1973, with the North and South Vietnam agreeing to behave themselves. 2 years later, the North Vietnamese storm in and take over South Vietnam. With the fall of Saigon, Vietnam is unified in 1975 as a communist entity, and 35 years of war, civil war, bloodshed, and upheaval is over, with the North taking over and remaining ostensibly communist to this day. So there you go. That's true. I will say that terrorists do have no religion. Western hasn't proven itself since they stole nature's resources and continue to steal from countries such as Africa, and continue to put them in debt, and also create a currency system. That's why the white man win. Yeah. Part of that is true. Most of it is not. The truth of the matter is, were there extractive and exploitative ways that the Europeans gained their wealth and their power? Of course there were, and they were certainly awful in many of these ways. And I talked about in my live stream lecture on Africa last week and the way the British and the French created these exploitative economies. After depopulating Africa for slaves, they went back and stole a bunch of its resources later on. This didn't make them necessarily wealthy. These powers were already quite wealthy and quite technologically advanced, which is why they were able, with really small contingents of forces, to defeat the Africans in numerous wars. Through politicking, maneuvering, manipulation, and economic investment, they actually eventually were able to exact political control over large portions of Africa. The reason Africa was divided in 1885 at the Berlin Congress was because there was a fear of the Europeans not fighting the Africans, but fighting each other. And that's why the African countries were divided in the ways that they were. So it was exploitative, it was usually parasitic, it was also symbiotic at times through the building up of infrastructure and education. So it's not just that the Europeans just stole everything and that's how they became successful. Ingenuity, creativity, industrialization, all of these things put Europe ahead of the rest of the world. And many of the ideas of Western liberalism were adopted by Easterners when they sought independence. Ho Chi Minh quoted the Declaration of Independence. So, yeah, Ben, I don't remember dating you, so. What do you think about the bombing of Tehran? So Israel, it might be asking for biting more than it can chew. Its attack on Iran seems pretty unprovoked. The fear is that Iran is enriching uranium and will be able to have nuclear weapons very soon, which they will immediately try to use on either Israel or the United States or both. And so there's this fear, this existential fear amongst the Israelis of that happening. And rather than waiting for talks and deals to be made between the US and Iran, basically say they don't care and have attacked Iran, and Iran is getting ready to retaliate against them and the Americans, who have been helping them even though they said they wouldn't help originally. Yeah, so thank you, Bart, I appreciate that. When did the Irish have it bad over here? The Irish have had it terrible in the United States for a long time. I mean, there were signs saying Irish and dogs need not apply. Some of the most heavy discrimination was against the Irish because they were seen as Catholics, they were seen as people who were coming to steal jobs. Yes, those narratives have always existed, and they were generally distrusted. So, there you go. Let me see. After the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, how did Judaism go on? When did modern rabbinic Judaism start? It already was. The building blocks of modern Judaism were there, at least in the sense of rabbinic Orthodox Judaism. The Council of Jamnia in the 2nd century set up a decentralized form of worship that did not center on sacrifices and yearly tributes paid to the temple, and created more of a synagogue-like system that already existed in many cities, basically allowing Jews to centralize and spiritualize many of the aspects of the Old Testament that they had been practicing in their trips to Jerusalem. So, Joe, it can be a fuzzy line, but it really isn't. So a tribe is part of a nation. So there's the Cheyenne and Lakota. Those are 2 tribes of the Sioux Nation. They are different types of Sioux people. So, hi, Avery. When did the Democratic Party become the party of social justice and the Republican Party become the party of conservative politics? It's been a slow but steady process with that. The Democratic Party, the 60s is really the beginning of a change between both political parties, and the political parties are changing even now. The Republicans used to be the party of free trade and war and foreign interventionism. Now they're the party of protectionism and isolationism. So this is a revolving door, and things change over time. Really, after the 1960s, the Democratic Party began to embrace civil rights. For the last 90 years, the African Americans have overwhelmingly voted Democratic, and so there's things like that that have been indicators of the Democrats edging their focus towards minorities, and the Republicans edging their focus towards conservatism. I think Reagan is really what made the Republicans less of a moderate right party and more of a hard right party. So, can you talk about the importance of the Little Rock Nine and what Eisenhower's actions were? The Little Rock Nine were the first 9 African-American children in Little Rock, Arkansas, to be integrated in the public school system, and the President Eisenhower sent the National Guard, I think in 1958, to ensure that that happened against the Democratic governor. I forget his name. So, hello. So if you're enjoying what you're talking about and all of this stuff, please like and subscribe. We got banh mi, at least from the French imperialism of Vietnam. Yes, imperialism brought with it cultural exchange, the Columbian exchange when the colonization of the New World occurred. There's not just steal and take and kill. That does happen, and happens in horrible, horrible ways. There's also cultural, economic, social exchanges, and it's not that natives were just being slaughtered without end, at least initially. Native Americans, natives in Africa, natives in Asia tended to be welcoming, although some were suspicious, tended to be welcoming of Europeans one way or another. So, no, I did not remind teachers of homework. Even I had the good sense not to do that. Fun fact, Julius Caesar was only stabbed 5 times when alive out of 23, and only one of the 23 would have been fatal anyways. I think the blood loss made it fatal. Yeah. What is Iran's ideological position? It seems obsessive fanatical. Iran was a huge ally of the United States and the British after the British mandate of Iran after the end of the Great War in 1918. The British played kingmaker, literally, and picked the Reza family, and Reza Shah, eventually, Mohammad Reza Shah, was the king of Iran. Shah is the ancient word for ruler for the Persian and Iranian people, and he was under political pressure in 1979 because of the rise of radical Islamic riots, protests mixed with far-left protests that wanted him to slacken his dictatorial control over the Iranian people. He was in many ways, a military dictator with good ties with the West, so that's why the West allowed him to stay in power, which is what they did with Francisco Franco and and Juan Perón and a bunch of other guys. But basically, in 1979, the Iranian Revolution happened, and the U.S. backed off its support, allowing the Iranian people to have their voices heard. These voices were immediately commandeered and manipulated by Ayatollah Khomeini and the Islamic Revolution, which made Iran one of the most extreme of Islamic countries. The Islamic Republic of Iran is in power to this day. The Shah was thrown out of power, and all the leftists who were fighting for redistribution of wealth and civil liberties lost all of theirs as well. So they were duped. So those countries are in debt like Africa, and they continue to take their resources, such as France, for example. Yep, although I think that's coming to an end. Let me see here. Fun fact, only 8% of Hong Kong had to be returned to China. We could have kept Hong Kong Island, so that was sovereign British territory, not alone. Yes, how did Britain get it, though? So by white people being in charge of the world, they have used to against brown man through institutional racism. No. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Let me see. No, I don't want to buy a Nintendo Switch. I don't want to buy you a Nintendo Switch. No offense. Let me see here. Racism can only exist if one race believes they are superior. So would white people be racist if a brown man had some wealth and power? What? That race? No. I don't know what you're saying. So let me see here. So if you have a topic or a question regarding history or social studies, drop it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer. Yeah, the Italians were treated every immigrant group that has come to the United States, and this is something that's obviously relevant to right now, has gone through a series of accusations, fears of crime, suspicion, not being American enough, not paying enough taxes, not having jobs, not producing wealth. These are all things that every immigrant group has gone through the rounds of enduring since they have been in the United States. And there's eventually an equalizing point where that starts to slow down. The economic and social fortunes of those people increase, and then someday they're all just considered white people. Anglo-Americans did not consider the Irish white originally. They did not consider the Germans white originally. They did not consider the Italians, the Greeks, or the Jews to be white, and yet all of them are kind of bunched together as white today, even Ashkenazi Jews. So, now let me see here. Let me see, just going through the chat. Tell us about 9/11. That was the attack by Al-Qaeda in 19 hijackers from different parts of the Middle East, coordinated by Osama bin Laden, hijacked 4 different planes, 2 of them striking and bringing down the Twin Towers in New York, 1 of them striking the Pentagon, and 1 of them crashing in a field in Pennsylvania after it was re-hijacked by the American passengers aboard Flight 93. It triggered the United States into starting the war on terror, bringing its allies into that sphere, and invading Iraq and Afghanistan. So, there you go. I am not Hugh Hefner, but I do have a smoking jacket like him. I'm History Hefner. Is it inappropriate to use terms like far right and far left of ideologies which are not liberal? Example, communism. No, I don't think so. I think we've got to understand that there's something as the right and the left, and there's something like the far right and the far left, and they're all extremism. So, Vichy France in World War II or World War III, depending on how you can determine it. Vichy France was led by Philippe Pétain, a war hero from the previous World War, and he was installed by the Nazis to basically run a puppet state in France, where they basically worked for a nationalist agenda and helped the Nazis exploit and kidnap undesirables such as the Jews, and also basically brought the French to heel, keeping their entire imperial apparatus from actively fighting the Germans in Africa and Asia. So there you go. Don't say which grade I teach, but I taught middle school and high school. Why were the Japanese and Germans the ones that propelled America into both wars? In the First World War, there was German U-boat that sunk a British ship with Americans on it. In the Second World War, there was Pearl Harbor. So unrestricted submarine warfare, along with the Zimmermann telegram, brought the United States into the Great War because the Germans promised Mexico that if they attacked the United States, they would help them take back the Southwest and California. And then Pearl Harbor was because of an American embargo on oil sales to the Japanese because of their aggression against French Indochina, which is Vietnam, which I was just talking about. It's all connected. It's all part of the same story. Yeah. Why did Chinese civilization keep getting reintegrated, and why was Vietnam never syncized? I don't know what you mean by syncized, but Chinese civilization, you had different empires with different backgrounds, some of them foreign, some of them domestic, taking power and seizing it from each other. You have the Manchurians in the Qing dynasty. You have the Ming dynasty, which was native Chinese. You have the Yuan, which were the Mongols. You had different empires and kingdoms and division periods, like the Three Kingdoms period and the Northern State and the different states period, Warring States period, where the Chinese had different types of civilizations running their society. So yeah, and yes, who wouldn't believe in frogs? Hello, Hardik. Oh, Chambial. Hello, Chambial. So you seem pro-white, which is fine, but I don't think there is any point asking you questions considering whites are the more hired. This is proven by numerous statistics. Not in the United States. Actually, Indians have the highest economic success rates in the United States. And most Asian groups do better than whites do. It's not about race, it's about culture. Cultures that emphasize education, prioritize, in this case, STEM in the West has been very popular, tend to have the highest rates of marriage success, the highest educational advantages, and the highest economic productivity. So you're just thinking of terms of white and black. You've got to think in a pluralistic society like the United States, you have to think in terms of all the different civilizations. And Asian Americans have endured horrifying amounts of discrimination as well. So I'm not pro-white. I'm pro-people. I'm pro-truth. I'm pro-history. I'm not fighting for white people. I don't have white guilt that I'm trying to excise, and I'm not trying to do anything there. So, Deden, hello. The U.S. is the only country to trigger Article 5 and put everyone in a war, yet complains that everyone is using the U.S. for their defense. Yes, the U.S. has been used for everyone's defense. That's why the British were not defeated by the Germans in the Third World War or the war before that. So yes, Harry, the United States complains all the time. That is true. But, I mean, you look at the U.S. is kind of living off of its own reputation, and that's why there's been absolute disasters like in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan, which were totally... have just ruined America's reputation when it comes to foreign policy. But the reason the United States has been looked to in foreign intervention, both for charitable and philanthropic actions and for military intervention, is because of the might of America's military-industrial complex, which was created through the two world wars in the 20th century. The U.S. has been pretty successful in massive wars, and that's why countries look to them for both their relief efforts that have been before, during, and after those wars, and their militaristic efforts as well. 9/11 happened because the radical terrorist group Al-Qaeda was committed to the destruction of the big Satan, the United States, and I keep wanting to say Saddam. Osama bin Laden had targeted the United States, had targeted New York, had targeted the World Trade Center several times in the 1990s. Did Philip Pétain's reputation sink after World War II, or was he still renowned? No, he died in prison, being on trial for war crimes because of what he did when he was in charge of the Vichy government. So, what is your favorite U.S. division battalion in U.S. history and why? B-52s, well, those are bombers. I like the different paratroopers I've heard about. 101st Airborne, that's the one I'm thinking of. And the earliest Marines who fought the Barbary War. How they created the Marines is really fascinating. I don't know where I Love Music is. He comes and goes at will, as anyone can at any time. Do you think we are moving towards hyper-localized economy? No. The economies are actually on the opposite. They're moving towards a more global system. Zimmerman telling me was if the U.S. went to war with Germany, Mexico would attack the U.S. It wasn't Mexico should declare war on the U.S. because it would be a fun idea to get back land. No, that's not true. They were raised by Pancho Villa in the southwestern portion of the United States. The Germans promised to have Mexico's back if war happened with the United States. The U.S. on that auspice and the auspice of renewed unrestricted submarine warfare immediately went to war. Let me see. Do you know the history of serial killers? A little bit. Depends on which serial killers you want to talk about. I've done videos on talked about some of them, like Bundy and H.H. Holmes and stuff like that. U.S. is less racist than Europe because that is a stolen land. It may be a stolen. I mean, all land is stolen, and yes, the U.S. in particular created a country that was based on the stolen land from Native Americans. But that doesn't make the U.S. less racist. So the United States is the only country to trigger war, yet the rest of the NATO, okay. I think Harry and Harst are going at it in the chat. And I'm trying to catch up to the chat and answer questions as soon as I possibly can. Everyone forgets about the Asian Americans. Yes, people do. Do you think the school teach propaganda in their history? Yes, they do. History is written by the victors, and that's what Evan's complaining about, and he has a right to complain about it. Lionizing white and European and Western history isn't necessarily a good idea. Telling the truth about it and its good parts and its bad parts is. Any history that only tells you bad about one group is history you should ignore. Well, and on the other hand, a history that only tells you good about one side should also be ignored. Yeah. See, Evan, this is what does make me take you seriously. When you say stuff like, I'm Asian, so I know we are smarter than whites, the UK is highly racist. That's a racist statement. What you just said is racist. Not saying the UK is racist, but saying that you're smarter than whites. That's racist. There are plenty of white people who are incredibly brilliant, and there are plenty of Asians who are incredibly brilliant. Do you agree that LBJ's Great Society welfare program was a failure over time, especially for disbarred groups within the United States? It was solving a particular problem, but it didn't have a long-term solution for it. So I understand the point and intentions of it and some of the good that it does and how people rely on it to this day and are worried about it being taken away from them, but it did do a lot of, it had unintended consequences for sure, which is why single motherhood has skyrocketed in communities of color and other communities that struggle, and that's been a real problem. That's what the U.S. was very good at. Like in Iraq, we were given 4 provinces to govern and make us feel important, even though the U.S. made up 98% of military contributions, which is fascinating because the British had already been in Iraq, hadn't they? In fact, Iraq exists partly because of the British and the French partitioning it after defeating the Ottomans. The Bosnian genocide, I don't know a huge amount about it, but it was in 1994 and 1995, it was the breakup of Yugoslavian countries, and it was the Balkanization process where Balkan countries gained their independence. And war with Kosovo was a huge problem in the mid-1990s for that region. And I'm forgetting exactly how it led to a genocide, so I wouldn't know. Some genocides happen because of displacement. The Syrians, the Armenians being sent to the Syrian desert, which I have a video on that you should go check out, is how the Armenian genocide happened. It was displacement and lack of proper resources. Some genocides happen through just mass murder, like the Holocaust. But almost every genocide involves the migration of people and people who are very close to another group of people deciding to terrorize them, like in Rwanda or in Nazi Germany. So, what price does China pay for their massive economic mobility? It's not a price they paid. They've become extraordinarily successful, and a lot of people have been lifted out of poverty, yet you still have sweatshops and child labor and all of that stuff. Do you think World War II was right? I think it's technically World War III, and yes, I do think it was right. I think it was justified. What's your favorite historical topic? The one I have the most experience dealing with is Russian history, and I have a series on that right now. Do you think Manifest Destiny will sooner or later extend to space? America and China seem interested in lunar and Martian bases. Yeah, the United States already started that with the Soviets and won against the Soviets, so they're probably going to start again. Sorry. Let me keep going here. Elaine Warnos, do you know her? The movie Monster is based on her. I've seen the movie. Charlize Theron. Warnos was a woman who masqueraded as a prostitute and used that in a way to execute men. I think she killed like 8 or 9 before she was arrested. She and her lover went on a crime spree. How do we know the government is promoting propaganda or truth? Verifying through independent sources, collaborating and synthesizing media accounts. Studying history helps us because we can see what's happened in the past and we can create an understanding. So studying contemporary history helps us, but also studying older history and similar accounts and similar experiences helps us understand what the government is doing and why, if it's true or if it's propaganda or if it's both. Believe it or not, it can be. Now, Pakistan isn't stolen, neither is India. So not all lands are stolen. Stop trying to minimize that all white men did. I'm not blaming white men for everything. That's fair. Yes, thank you. Evan, you finally said something I agree with. Vijit, hello. The UK was influenced much by the US in the 1980s by Ronald Reagan and Thatcher, so British culture just caved in on itself. I wouldn't say that. British culture is still, the big problem with British culture now is a growing, and this is a problem for European culture that the United States doesn't have nearly as much, but still has, is the growing issue of diversity and multiculturalism, the plurality, creating a pluralistic society that has been almost always defined by being British is really, really difficult. And I say that as I drink tea and talk about what a great historian Harry is. Why UK never recovered post-World War II superpower? Because the United States and the Soviet Union kind of bullied it into giving up a lot of its colonial power. But there are plenty more European Jews that won Nobel Prizes. Education, economic opportunities, all of that. Do you think Thatcher would have melted if I threw a cup of water on her? That's a good one. What was the reason for the Gulf War, and what countries helped the U.S.? The British helped, I think the Australia, Canada, they always helped the British out, typically. I don't know if anyone else, the Saudis, the Yemenites, they were all worried about that. Yeah, that's true, Harry. So I gave you 11 more years. And I explained it in my live stream lecture last week. Go watch that. Are there country who after the partition joined together? Not yet. You could say that after the partition of Israel and Palestine, it became Israel, and Israel dominated the Palestinian areas. That would be the best I could say. Corzo, good to see you. Have you ever seen the Milton Friedman TV series, Free to Choose? How was Khan taken into CCP control? That was made before the CCP took over Hong Kong, but I have seen some of it. We need to stay out of space completely. Oh, I Love Music is here. Good to see you, as always. Yes, the UK is one of the least racist countries in the world, except for that other one across the pond. And Canada. Canada's very unracist. And it's easy to not be racist when you don't have a large pluralistic society. It's actually harder to be racially tolerant when you do have pluralism. What do you know about Rockefeller? I heard he lied about the British losing the war, unsure which one, but he fiddled this so he could allow stocks to drop and then bought shares when they rose back up. Sounds like something he would do. And I am at 1%, so I need to charge my phone. I'm not sweltering as much as I usually am with the heat, but I am a little on the sweaty side. So you're going to take a tour through the Friendly Neighborhood History Studio. If you haven't done so, please like and subscribe. We're here every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then on Sundays, our 4 p.m. Eastern live stream lecture tomorrow. I will have to check the poll and see what we are doing. Unfortunately, Simon the Bunny is not with us today, but we've got Harry and Hars and Rodolfo holding down the chat, doing such a great job, so show them some love. Go to France. I love Harry saying that France is racist too. In France, I mean, there's racist in every country. There's racist in every society. So I don't have a cob pipe. I have a church warden pipe. I don't smoke in the studio yet, but I may eventually. So, and yes, this is my smoking jacket. And yeah, they're not grandma's curtains. My grandma has more taste than that. You ever eat corn the long way? Probably not. Yeah, Lily, she was an interesting person. Let me see. British people like to cover for the racism by pointing out that other people are worse, not by arguing that they aren't racist. Yes, and I mean, to be fair, Stephen, I do that too, and I don't just like to do that because of whataboutism. Acknowledging racist past and racist problems is something that is necessary, but it's funny, the West is the only one who has ever made, especially the British, to do that. It's always the British who are called upon to be accountable for their racist past. It's always the West who is criticized and made to acknowledge its discrimination and oppression in the past. When other societies were oppressive, not at the same rate, because they didn't have the technological capabilities of interacting with other races at the rate that Europeans did. So were Europeans more racist than the Chinese and the Indians? Yes, because they had more examples and more interactions with other different societies. Those societies themselves were extraordinarily discriminatory, even to their own people, let alone foreigners. That's why China and Japan were closed off. That's why they declined significantly until the 19th century, and why the British had such an easy time of taking over China and implementing its economic will on them, because China had closed off because of fear of foreigners centuries before. So, yes, is it true that the British that people in the West do argue like that? Yes. but it's also true that it's a Western theme to criticize your own country, its history, and its ideas. That is not something you see in the East. So, generally, the UK is one of the best places on earth when it comes to lack of racism or things like that. Definitely would agree with you there. Well done for actually staying. The UK has a bug culture clash of its white people being awkward about brown man simple. I am from a very racist city and I want to leave. You must be from London, bro. I disagree. I've heard very racist things said to my face. There are plenty of racist people, but that's the anecdote thing. Oh, I haven't seen any racists. I've ran into a lot of racists. That's just anecdotal stuff. So, Ireland is nice. But anecdotal evidence doesn't carry the water that you think it does. Do you think Israel and the USA are brothers? Feels like the USA will do anything to support Israel. If Israel wants to pick a fight with Iran, that's their prerogative. I don't know what level, what really helps the U.S. by just allowing Israel to do that. But this unswerving commitment to Israel, there's a large Jewish population in the United States. There's a large contingency and connection between the U.S. and Israel because of a democracy. But the United States is not Israel's whipping boy necessarily. But there are indications that might be true if Israel really wants to do a full-scale war with Iran, and the U.S. Just kind of lets them. So. Stephen, can you name me a non-racist country? I love the idea. I love the values of not being racist, but it's almost impossible to have a non-racist country. Hello, Bartos. Great to see you. What do you think about people supporting Hamas after October 7th? Supporting the Palestinians, supporting the Gazans, trying to find them the humanitarian rights and aid, and demanding that Israel stop bombing children is absolutely acceptable. Demanding that Egypt and Jordan open their borders and allow the Palestinians actually in. Demanding for an end of any apartheid state, be it Israel's or be it Jordan's or Lebanon's, for instance, against the Palestinians, absolutely understandable. But supporting terrorists who did horrifying atrocities in the name of justice, not acceptable. People are allowed to believe whatever they want, but that just hurts the cause. Hamas has done more damage to the Palestinian cause than anyone else other than the government of Israel. The U.S. is cycling back to the 60s. We are once again seeing tragic events in response to the greater discontent. Mangione and today's political strategies are blatant examples defining tumultuous times. I did a video about the two killings. You had 2 Minnesota lawmakers killed by a guy whose political identity is kind of ambiguous, although he did technically work for the Walz government in Minnesota. There's a lot of rollback. There's a lot of contention, and the riots in L.A., there were riots in L.A. in the 60s, the 65 Watts riots, some of the worst. And thank you, Bartos, for joining us from there. Let me see here. Why did the Nazi generals like Goering and Hitler look Jewish? I don't know. It's this weird thing to me, that Hitler believed the perfect people were blonde-haired, blue-eyed white people, and yet was a brown-haired, brown-eyed, short German guy. So, yeah. There's a lot of people complaining about England not having freedom of speech. You can't criminalize racism. That's true. You can dissuade and condemn it, but you can't criminalize it. How many unusable ballistic missiles does Iran currently have now? You mean usable ballistic missiles as in nuclear missiles? None. So, the British have lost their freedom of speech. There's a lot of people who say that. And yes, I am wearing a smoking jacket. Good catch, Johnny. I am in my country, Al. Thank you. I don't necessarily agree with force that takes lives on either side, but as an astute observer of history, I think the cycle is repeating again. People seem fed up. Yep. White countries for whites and black countries for blacks. I don't like that necessarily. I just am too modern in my love of diversity and enjoying different cultures and different types of history to say that this country should belong to these people and these people only. Yeah. The biggest anniversary of the day, 36th birthday of the Soviet masterpiece video game Tetris. Interesting. Tetris is 36 years old. Very fun game. Who doesn't love Tetris? Let me see here. Yeah, I don't want Evan blocked, even if I disagree. The Hashemites, Jordan, used to also control the Islamic holy sites. When did they lose this authority to the House of Saud? In 1932, the British gave the Saudis the control over Arabia. And by the way, the Palestinian flag and the Jordanian flag is a derivative of the Arabic revolutionary flag from 1916 and was eventually adopted by the Palestinians only after the PLO was formed in 1964. The reason UK and America are equipping Israel with ammunition is to keep Islam out of the countries. There's a lot of people that are afraid of Islam. Islamophobia, yeah. I'm from the United States. I don't share more than that, though. Yeah, let me see here. King Abdullah of Jordan was in Star Trek. That's kind of funny. He lived long and prosper. Was Hitler ideological driven? Yes, and hatred and racism and all sorts of different things. And ideologies can have hatred and racism in them. I don't get why people are cool with Trump being in this country. If his granddad is an illegal immigrant from Germany, is it different because he's white? No, not necessarily. He's not even the child of an illegal immigrant whose citizenship would be disputed, but 14th Amendment would probably block that, which Trump, unfortunately and stupidly, wants to get rid of, or at least strip it of its ability to give immigrants automatic citizenship for their children. I don't know if his grandfather was an illegal immigrant from Germany. I don't know if he was illegal necessarily. There's a lot of Americans struggle defining legal versus illegal immigration. But even if he was, it's literally grandfathered in. And obviously the attacks on the 14th Amendment aren't going anywhere, even if they are technical corrects. Yeah. Should we deport Elon too? Probably not. Again, it's not deporting legal residents or citizens. It's deporting illegal immigrants is the big argument from the Trump side. On the topic of American history, do you think human slavery was the cause of a least productive farming industry leading to these less patents than the Southern people owned? Yes, and that's what Lincoln knew, Corzo, and that's why Lincoln was perfectly okay with slavery staying in the South, because the more backwards and brittle the South became, the easier it would be for them to give up slavery peacefully rather than a war. He saw how entrenched it actually was, and it went crazy. But yes, and thank you, Steve-O, for joining us from England, as Harry, my wonderful moderator, is a Brit. I don't think anyone should be blocked. I mean, if a comment is disrespectful or rude or just a trolling and it's distracting people from actually learning and asking good questions and having a good conversation and helping the vibes, which you can do by liking and subscribing, then yeah, I'm not a fan of it. But if it's just about a topic and you're just being petulant or whatever about it, that's fine. Do you think, oh, I already answered that. Weimar Germany had less infighting than this chat. That's definitely true. Although Germany had a lot of infighting in the 30s. What do you think Israeli people want to the Palestinians? I think most Israelis have gotten sick and tired of constant warfare and constantly being existentially threatened by the Muslims, and they kind of just want them gone. There are 2 million Arab Israelis, and there are plenty of Israelis who criticize Netanyahu, who probably want some sort of peaceful solution with the Palestinians, but either leads to them getting their own state or to the end of radical governments, which seems extraordinarily sensible. But yeah, there's plenty of Israelis who are for that, and there's plenty of Israelis like Netanyahu who are just sick and tired of it and want them all to be removed one way or another. What are they protesting for again? The protests today, the No King protests, are in direct contradiction to 2 things. One, the ICE raids this past week, where Trump administration went into California with warrants trying to take as many illegal immigrants away as possible, not just violent criminals, but people who had been here for quite some time and had created a way of life who were undocumented. That led to a lot of outrage and frustration, including a senator being detained by DHS and other problems as well. And so, believing that Trump is misusing his authority as commander-in-chief and head of the executive branch, they're protesting the existence of ICE and the existence of deportations at all, as well as the president's right to deport people and regulate immigration. They are also protesting because today is the 250th anniversary of the founding of the U.S. military, which you can find out by watching my videos, because every day I upload a short where I talk about the history, what happened today in history. I do today's birthdays and today's death anniversaries every day. So check those out. But Scarlett, basically, they're also protesting Trump's military parade, which coincides with his birthday, Flag Day, and that 250th anniversary, which is right now going through the streets. So I don't think Elon was illegal. See, there's different categories of illegal and legal immigrants, and people don't like to properly understand them. So some illegal immigrants overstay visas. These are illegal immigrants who pay a lot in taxes, for instance. Some of them are doctors and researchers and medical assistants and work in the STEM field who just so happen to overstay their visas. Some people are students who overstay their student visas. Some illegals are people who cross the border and stay here and try to form a life for themselves or do other things that may not be as savory. And so there's different types of illegal immigrants. So overstaying a work visa is not the same thing as somebody who just kind of slipped into the country and lived here for a while. Let me see. What do you think of Tommy Robinson? Tommy Robertson? Do you mean Tommy Robinson? I think he's the Brit who complains about Islamic immigration. So, yeah. Let me see. Fabian, conservatives can struggle with common sense too. Believe me. I allow all views, but white people's mentality in the UK, from my opinion, without sources, has been disgusting. Yes, and Evan, some of your comments and actions people have found disgusting on this channel, and I don't care. I'm a free speech absolutist. People can say what they want as long as they're not just derailing everything. Student permits are not illegal. Blacks sold blacks because they wanted money and have no remorse. That's not fully fair. There were plenty. The people who suffered the most were the poor slaves, be they sold by whites or by blacks. So, I am from the United States. I'm not a professor, but I would love to be, and I'm just a historian. I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well too. Illegal immigrants are taking advantage of birthright citizenship. It's called anchor babies. That's a big debate, Texas. It's good to see you, by the way. It's been a while since I've seen you, but a huge debate is obviously how far does the 14th Amendment go, and that's something that Trump is trying to curtail, and the courts are slapping back at him for that. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting, Harry. Yeah. Stramer's playing both political sides and trying to do what he can to keep U.S.-UK relations strong in the light of Trump's antagonisms. So I'll see that. Let me see. Interesting, Evan. Thank you for doing that research. What was the best military weaponry or vehicles made by the United States? The Sherman tanks. So let's see. It's annoying. A lot of people are supporting Trump while not noticing he's going senile. He tripped up like Joe Biden. People need to write down Trump's exact words to read back afterwards. To be fair, they've been having to do that for Trump in his speeches for 10 years. We used to think he was saying bigly. It turned out it was big league. What I think, Rando, that there is definitely concerns about Trump's age, and he's going to be out of the picture in a few years. The fact that he will not die in office is a point up. Biden, if he had been reelected, would probably have died in office, unfortunately. I mean, battling cancer that he kept secret is one thing, but that was one of the biggest scandals and cover-ups in U.S. history. So fair is fair. I mean, yes, is Trump kind of a hypocrite for criticizing Biden's mental decline? Yes. But when the American media, the press, and the people and the Democratic Party basically lied to the American people about Biden's mental decline, that was inexcusable. And the Democrats paid the price of that by having to throw Biden out at the last second, putting Kamala Harris without the proper amount of time, and Trump won the election. And so, yes, Trump did slip and fall, and I just think back to his silly criticisms of Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden doing the same thing. So, yeah, I mean, Trump, no one's immune from falling. Gerald Ford fell down, and he wasn't senile. He was in his 60s. He was younger than Trump and Biden. So presidents fall sometimes. Crazy. They're human. They fall, especially when they're looking and waving at people and stuff like that. And Biden falling wasn't proof that he was mentally unfit. Neither is Trump necessarily. What does the Palestinians think of Hamas? I heard they voted Hamas. They did, and a lot of them chafe under Hamas. A lot of them resist Hamas. A lot of them hate Hamas and hate what Hamas has done to them. It all depends because there's different Palestinians in different areas. The Palestinians in the West Bank have little love for them. But even a more moderate group like the PLO has lost a lot of ground to the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, which is extremely aggressive under the very corrupt Mahmoud Abbas, who is comparable in some ways to Netanyahu. So, yes, that 9 Shy, I've heard about some of that. That needs to stop. That's unconscionable. Those are one of the big reasons why the protests. But people not delineating properly between illegal and legal immigrants is something that happens on both the right and the left, and has happened throughout American history. Don't you think democracy is overrated? We haven't been able to elect the right men constantly for decades. It's not the United States isn't necessarily a democracy. I think democracy works well if you have a society that is balanced, listening, and harmonious. And I think that the American founders didn't always expect that to be the case, so that's why they created a republic. What happens when you read George H.W. Bush's lips? No new taxes, and then he broke his promise and lost an election. What do you think about the situation between Israel and Iran right now? Everybody's been asking about that, but I'll answer because I appreciate you asking about it. I think that I think Israel's taking an extremely preemptive, perhaps too preemptive of a strike against Iran. And that's just based on the history between the two of them. I don't see how this ends without a war in the Middle East, which the United States would have to reluctantly support Israel, which would really anger a lot of people in the country. If the Mongol army had landed on Japan instead of being lost in a storm, what do you think would have happened? I still think the Japanese had the wherewithal and the composure to defeat the Yuan warriors. So I just don't see that they were defeated another time as well. I just don't think that just because of a typhoon that the Mongols were defeated. I think the Japanese were way too strong and overpowered. Yes, thank you, I Love Music, for explaining that. And I'm going to put that as my pinned message so you know exactly who I am. We should also pin what I think about Israel-Iran, what I think about Israel-Hamas, and what my opinions are on how many world wars there are. Do you think we are kind of too much critical on Islam and Quran? I think some people are. I'm certainly not. I know Evan doesn't like that, but The truth of the matter is, I try my absolute best to be as fair to Islam as possible and recognize that the biggest victims of Islamophobia are Muslims, and the biggest victims of Islamic terrorism are also Muslims. So there you go. Let me see. Did Romans have a sense of nationalism or patriotism? Did this exist in the Middle Ages in Europe, or is it sort of a more modern phenomenon? The way it looks and the way we use modern ways, like parades and things like that, is modern. But there was nationalism and patriotism in ancient times, and it was usually shown through aggression and military colonialism and imperialism and conquering of others. Protection of the homeland also equal conquering the enemy. Expand or die was a common Roman phrase. Okay, let me see here. Why do you hate Israel and Jewish people so much? I love it. Somebody's asking me if I hate Israel and Jewish people, which is really, really funny because people also accuse me of loving the Palestinians. If everyone's accusing me from both sides, then I know that I'm being objective and fair. Yeah, let me see here. Do you think it's right that so many refugees are being allowed in Britain? I think that it's creating a new societal issue. Whether it's right morally or not is another thing. I think unlike America, which has been defined by immigrants in many, many ways and has been populated by different immigrant groups and has developed a pluralistic society out of basically no choice, but growing of America economically, socially, and by population has often been through immigration. I think Britain, France, and the rest of Europe have been defined and grown based on their national identities. And with America being founded by Angloids who rebelled against their British overlords, you have a difficult, tricky situation where America was founded on an idea and a principle that led to the inculcation and involvement of different groups of people from all over the world. That doesn't exist in British history as much. So it makes multiculturalism, it makes refugee resettling, it makes all of that a lot harder. Why did the Russian Empire stagnate relative to the Western Europe? Russia has an interesting cycle throughout its history. It falls behind the Europeans, then it catches up. This is because of the Mongol invasion, by the way, which I talk about in my Russian history series that I'm doing right now, and my series on the Tsars that I've done before. They stagnate and fall behind, and then they catch up, thanks to a great ruler like Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, or Alexander II. Then they fall behind again, then they catch up again, and it's how it's going. And right now they're in the fall behind, and they're trying to catch up, and Putin's kind of in the middle between both of those. Do we know why liberal states like California and New York voted for Trump? They did not vote overwhelmingly for New York, but there was definitely a shift towards the right because a lot of people blamed the Biden administration for crime rates, economic troubles, and immigration. So let me see here. Thank you for joining us from Ukraine, Artemis. Really appreciate that. Trump's slip was minor. The man goes to events nearly 18 hours a day and barely sleeps. Anyone calling him weak and comparing him to Biden is coping. I see a little bit of that. I would definitely say Trump is more robust than Biden. People saying Trump can't put together two words are funny because they used to criticize him for just sounding stupid. It's one or the other. So yeah. In the game, I really appreciate that. I'd love to go on Jeopardy. That'd be fun. We could use the money to make the channel even greater. Make friendly neighborhood history even greater. Not great again, because we've already been great. What do you want to know about Poland? I haven't played European War 7, so I wouldn't know. Would the United States be better off as a parliamentary democracy? I think that there's a lot of checks and balances. I think the U.S. is just too used to the system. I don't think a parliamentary democracy necessarily is better than a constitutional republic. And Britain was originally a constitutional republic, by the way. What did Bill Clinton not do? What did Bill Clinton not do in the White House? Sleep in the same room as Hillary. And by the way, just chiming in on the Evan, Hars, Perry back and forth. Evan, there's nothing stopping you from posting links in the chat. Yes, Evan. It helps any group to perpetuate systems that control other people. And if you're going to be if you're going to be criticizing white people for keeping racism going so that they can benefit and keep other people down, and you're going to praise the Indians, think about the caste system, the Varna system, and what that has done to Indians by other Indians. It's kind of ironic that someone is praising the Indians while criticizing the British for keeping people down. I do my best, Ricardo. Why do you think people associate wealth and the founding of the country with Confederacy and sovereign states that produced less productive people? People want to think that the United States was formed and based on slavery because it's a good narrative pusher. But it was the South's weakness that kept it behind. Slavery made the United States weak. It did not make the United States strong. Black people did build America, but not through slavery. I try my best, Trey. I like Pakistan. I like India. I like them all. Sometimes a little too. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Luca, about that. I like Russian history. I don't like Russians more than other people's, but I do love Russian history. Let me see. Going through the chat. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do so. I'm doing well. I'm going to speed round because we're almost near the end of the chat, and I think I'm behind. I promise I'm going to try to get to your questions as soon as I possibly can. Ottoman Empire, one of the greatest empires in all history. Underrated, definitely. Check out my videos there. Check out my video where I react to my own hot takes and explain exactly why I think that. What does the Jewish settlers want in Gaza? Reason they live. I think the Jews want to take over Gaza. Or a lot of Israelis do. And I think they see the opportunity now because who else is going to take over? And I actually think it's a good idea if they rebuild Gaza and then give it back to the Palestinians as a olive branch. That would be a great olive branch if they could do that. Do you look up to or down on Ben Shapiro? Personally, I find him very annoying and to be a condescending, lying jerk. Yeah, he definitely can be very condescending. I look up to him when it comes to speed reading and speed talking. I'm in a competition with him for who can talk faster. So there's that. Okay, Gaia Han is at the Hillary joke, so we're not always behind. Yes, humans will always have conflict. And today is indeed President Trump's birthday. Check out my Born Today videos and my video on President Trump. I mean, Andy, it's one of those things where it's like a bunch of a needle in a haystack. Votes count, but there's so many of them, it almost doesn't count individually. How quickly do you think China would turn on Russia and based on their past? They benefit and have a necessity for one to another. But if China had to choose Russia or the rest of the world, greetings from UK. Nathan, good question. I think China would want to keep its economic and political ties and internet and global markets open, and siding with Russia would hurt a lot of that. So I think they're going to be very hesitant to do that. It's not as automatic as some may think that China and Russia are just lock, step, and barrel. The MSM has been silent on China and Russia. They would be, as new Axis powers versus the US and Western Europe. Yeah, because but I don't know how tight they are necessarily. But then again, Russia, Germany, Japan, and Italy were not exactly hand in hand. And Mussolini hated the Aryan idea because he wasn't an Aryan. So, yeah. Viva Che Guevara. His birthday as well. He'd be 98 if he was still alive. Or 97? Something like that. Avery, hello. Let me see here. Everyone go and vote on friendlies. Yes, please vote on that poll. What do you think about Iran and Israel? Okay, I'm going to refer you to what I've said before. Maybe somebody in the comments can explain it more. But basically, I don't know how this necessarily helps Israel, but I understand their fear of Iran. So, Mideast lecture. Yep, that might be what I do. I'm doing my best, ever happy. And I'm only listing facts and events because I'm answering a bunch of questions. When I do a live stream lecture, I'm actually a little slower. People are connected to the house, comforting Gaza and Palestinians. Yes, but but Gaza's been leveled. It needs to be rebuilt, and the Israelis broke it, so they buy it. That's the old policy. Does Israel have enough? It'd be a nice geopolitical move by the Israelis to extend an olive branch. If the Palestinians turn it down, it would be very telling. Does Israel have enough interceptor missiles to defend Israel against the number of missiles Iran has? They have a few, but it's also the Iron Dome, which is funded by the U.S. Do you like North Korea's new warship? It launched yesterday. I wasn't paying attention. Where do you think the idea of a person having to vote a certain way depending on their looks and ethnicity came from? And what do you know about the Frankfurt School? So two things about that. One, there's this idea about a lot of people that because you look a certain way, you must vote a certain way, and that's because of demographics and voting trends. That should not be true because everyone is an individual with his or her own ideas. The Frankfurt School is this idea, took Marxist principles on economics and applied them to different sociological and interpersonal relationships such as race, gender, sexual orientation, things like that. And so the Frankfurt School was Herbert Marcuse, Derrida, Michel Foucault, some of these postmodern philosophers, Jean-Paul Sartre of the 19th century, late 19th, early 20th century, that embraced communist principles but applied them to different areas of the world rather than just looking at economic factors, which is what the Bolsheviks and Karl Marx and Mao Zedong had done. So here's the weirdest character from history. One of the weirdest is definitely Louis II, the King of Bavaria, Mad King Louis, who I should do a video on because he just died. His anniversary was there. Chelsea, that's not true. Was it 90% nuclear capacity for like 15 years now? It's clear he's just running from corruption charges and war crimes. He let October 7th happen and wants to drag the U.S. into it. Who knows, Biscuits, if that'll happen or not? I think that there has been a fear of enriching uranium. The UK, the US, the IAEA, the French, they've been worried about this for a long time. Yes, and please go and vote on that. How come we cannot resolve the issue of Palestine? In the past, they didn't have as many issues in this because people just went to war. You mean like the Muslims going to war with other Muslims? Look at how the Arabs chafed under the Ottomans. It's not as simple as white people and Israelis showed up and now it's bad for Palestinians. It's been bad for the Palestinians a long time. That's why there was a giant wall in Rafah keeping them out of going into Egypt, because there was fear of the Muslim Brotherhood overthrowing the Egyptian government. So Rasputin's definitely a good weirdo, and I have a couple of videos on him. Yes. Yeah, it's summer. I may not be in a smoking jacket much longer, but today it wasn't too hot. So the weather kind of lied to me. And thank you, Ronald Swanson, for joining us. And I love that quote. Big Ron Swanson fan. And if you want to be a fan of a Friendly Neighborhood History channel, be sure to like and subscribe on your way out. Let me see. Do you think history should be more from women and minorities to have a good point of view? It is. It's called History from Below, and we've done more and more on it, and that's been able to balance our view, so it's not just the victors writing history and people writing and men writing histories of women and white people writing history of minorities. So, Saludi Ayyubi decided to take Jerusalem and get on with it with discussions back and forth. Yes. You're basically saying violent oppression is much more preferable, and the West just fought that too. And yeah, Biscuits, it's great to see you. Thank you for your question. But yeah, we are at the very end. I start at 6 p.m. Eastern, Friday and Saturdays for the Q&A, Ask Me Anything. We've gone over 10 minutes over. Very true, Harry. Yes, Evan, who originally owned Israel? Who owned Israel before when did Islam get it created? And who owned Israel when Islam was created? See, it doesn't just start with Saladin. It starts with the fact that Islam is a colonizer who built a colonizing symbol, the Dome of the Rock, and Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount as a way to show their domination over the Christian and Jewish people that they had just stolen land from. The Ottomans stole Palestine. Well, actually, the Ottomans inherited Palestine from other people who had stolen it from the Christians, who had stolen it from the Muslims, who had stolen it from the Christians. So, yes. Evan, I like how you start history at a certain point and then don't talk about anything that happened before it. Saladin's an amazing ruler and a great general, and I give him a lot of love, so I agree with you there. But yeah. Yeah, Chelsea, don't troll. Yeah, Evan, except when he didn't against King Baldwin and Richard the Lionheart. So. Yes, and the Roman Empire and the Byzantine Christian Empire existed long before Islam ever came. The Sassanid Persians existed. Where are the Sassanids? Where are the Byzantines? What happened to them? Just pointing that out. Do you have episodes on how the British Empire fell? Yes, go back and watch my live stream lecture from last Sunday, and I've got a couple of other videos on it, smaller ones, but yeah. I should do a full-length video on it. It would be fun, but I would like to collab with Harry. If I'm ever going to do a video about British history and the fall of the British Empire, Harry needs to collab with me some way, some form. Harry, if you're interested, you could write the script for it or do the video with me. So, I know the Muslims say it has always been there, but the truth is it started with Prophet Muhammad and the kingdom of Judea had long been there before. We let them Jews love with us, but we gave them peace and invited them to live with us. And we also did the same in Spain. Yes, after stealing land that was anciently theirs, you let them live with you, like the United States did with the Native Americans. Oops. And yes, their Jews did have a lot of rights and access and opportunities with the Muslims. It is true that Muslims were more tolerant of Jews in the Middle Ages than the Christians were in many cases, which is funny because now that's kind of on its head, upside down. How do current Sino-Russian relations reflect or diverge from the strategic patterns established during the late Soviet era? But they've actually gotten closer since then, because after Khrushchev, Mao and the Chinese turned their backs on, and with the U.S. coming in with Nixon going to China, they turned their backs on the Soviets. What impact do you think COVID-19 will have on the long term? It's changed the way we do these things. It's allowed for more less personal reactions. It's made people more cloistered. People work from home. People use technology more. Zoom is a thing because of it. It's changed a lot of our psychology. Yeah. We didn't unalive any Spaniards. How did the Umayyads? Okay, Evan, I'm sorry, but that's just ridiculous. How did the Umayyads take over Spain? Do you think that the Spaniards just let them in and gave them the keys to the kingdom? What was the Battle of Tours? What was Poitiers? Who was Charles the Martel? So yes, Evan, you know a lot about history. You're very good at debating. You're not going to win this one. Never got rid of the people of the land. They just conquered them, subjected them to taxes, and then drafted them into their slave armies like the Janissaries. I'm very well aware of what they did. And I'm saying that the comparison is not that it's a perfect parallel, but the United States took over land that belonged to the Native Americans and then let them live there, which is exactly what the Muslims did in Israel. So there you go. It's not white history. It's absolutely true. The Moors in Spain didn't unalive anyone. They didn't kill any Christians in all those wars they fought with them. What was the Reconquista? Why did the Reconquista happen? So, anyways, I'm sorry, Evan, it's just not true. So, most interesting country where politics is interesting, recent for study purposes. The United States always is up there. Why did Islam grow after all this colonization? Because of extremely high birth rates. And it wasn't growing for a long time. It's only growing recently, and colonization is over. It's decolonization is happening. But yeah, just because Islam has grown by the sword, it is growing by the sword. Look at Boko Haram. Look at the Islamic Revolutionary Republic in Iran. Islam grows by the sword a lot, but it also grows peacefully, just like Christianity. I've talked about this before. So, yeah. Yes. So, Evan, thank you for just accusing me of white history. No, I do not work at Walmart. They fired me. That's why I'm doing this instead. George Washington is a Huguenot. Descendant Huguenots are Sephardic Jews, and Muhammad Moors fleeing Spanish in Huguenot Sephardic Jews. George Washington was not a Huguenot. Huguenots were French Protestants. They were not Jews. So, let me see. Are you left? Why are you critical of Islam? I'm critical of everything. I'm critical of Islam. I'm critical of anything in history, because that's what I have to do. I have to critique history. I'm critical of the Christian church and some of the things it's done. I'm critical of what Islam has done in some ways. So, yeah. Let me see. In India, it grew by itself, and Mughal Emperor didn't force conversions. Yes, but the Hindus don't seem to agree, which is why there's a Pakistan. There's a Pakistan because the Hindus created violent, militant wings of Hinduism just to combat Islam. So, yes. Islam spread in India. Yes, there are. Yes, Islam spreads because it has high birth rates. Things can spread by multiple ways. Yes, that Islam has many peaceful parts to it. It also has many violent parts of it, which is why the Middle East is the Middle East right now. So, no, they did not force conversion because they would have been overthrown by the Hindus. So, the door greeter saying historical fact. That would be me. Hinduism did grow. Birth rates are a huge reason why Islam grows, but so is forced conversions and violence. I mean, look at the Rashidun Caliphate. Where are the Sassanids? Where are the Byzantines? So, I'm sorry, Evan, but you were doing fine, but that I can't let slip. So let me see here. Anyways, Hinduism is in decline now. You're taking an argument from 500 years ago and applying it to now. Hinduism developed new wings of violent militancy to resist Islamic invasion and imperialism. India is not... Why is Buddhism an Indian religion? Why has it lost its foothold on India? So, yeah. Anyways, Evan, good topics as always, but I'm sorry, you're incorrect. Let me see here. Do Sicilians have black Africans? There are some fruit ties with North Africa. So, thank you, Evan, for calling me a liar. And it's on that note that we're going to finish up. I'm sorry that I lied to you guys. I tried not to lie during the 78 minutes, but we went a nice, fun time and had some good talks and everything. I really appreciate everyone joining us. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't. And we will be back tomorrow for the live stream lecture, 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll figure out what it is later. You guys get to pick by voting on the... you guys get to vote and pick the topic. And thank you, Hars. I like being based. Yes. Islam is the UK as a cancer, especially when it comes... Yeah, crafty, maybe. So, anyways, yes, I would say that's one of the reasons as well. It's definitely healthier. Interesting, Chelsea. I'm going to have to look into that, but I think it's a stretch to call George Washington black. Or Sephardic, but necessarily black. Not all Sephardim are black. But anyways, all right. I'm sorry. She saw me in the smoking jacket real okay, and she was just like, yep, that's my man. Sorry about that. All right. Take care. I hope you all have a very good evening, or maybe Evan prefers me to say salam, which is perfectly fine with me. Salam to all of you, and I will see you again tomorrow for the live stream lecture, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Take care. Remember, love history. Bye-bye now.